Hi, my name is Maris Memes. For those of you that know my content, you'll know that a few years back, around 2018, I did videos about Isaiah Johnson and Billy Mitchell both being frauds. I have stayed out of this for the most part for the last, 5 years or so because I've wanted to, again, focus on my actual career, things that were of interest to me, not some generic run-of-the-mill cheaters that back in the day would follow the equivalent of just following TVs and camera crews around arcades, because that's what you would do back in the 90s. Would be the overly talkative type of person that would just jump in front of the TV. Hey, my name is so-and-so. You remember me from the last arcade? Yeah, I'm famous. That's basically what makes up Isaiah and Billy to begin with. They were put on a pedestal because they put themselves there, and then they became actors for the gaming community. And you know what? They're living in a dream world. They're living in a literal fucking dream world. Now, as most of you are aware, I was friends with Apollo Legend before he offed himself, and at the time, prior to messing around with exposing Todd Rogers and Billy Mitchell, he was about to expose Isaiah Johnson, but instead I turned around and did it. And he praised me for it because he thought it was a great video. And there were a few things that we overviewed together back in that time period. Certain informants that he got approached by were misleading him and giving him the incorrect information that he needed when he was making videos. So he was basically publicizing the equivalent of propaganda without knowing that it was actually propaganda, unfortunately. And I pointed that out to him, and his statement was, it's too late, it's already up, might as well just pretend it doesn't exist. And, that was his stance, which I respected. I mean, if the content's already up and he's well aware of what it is, what difference does it make to change it now when not as many people are watching it? So where does that actually leave me, Maris Memes, now after, 5 years, and why am I now talking about this? After his passing, Karl Jobst kind of took the scene with the whole, exposing speedrunners and, the only thing that I will say, the only video content of his that I actually liked was the Wada Games expose, which, honestly, Wada Games has ultimately ruined the fucking gaming market for when it comes to rare items unopened, and the way they grade is really fucking sketchy and bullshit because you could just resend it in and get a different grading, which that should not have been the case. Unfortunately, it was, and a lot of people have been conned by Wada Games. Fuck Wada Games, but it really didn't take somebody like Karl to do that. Anybody could have fucking done that. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't take a very popular figure to do that. Pat the NES Punk had a problem with Wada Games, and he could have done a whole video documentary, breaking down why Wada Games is sus. But unfortunately, Pat didn't do that. So, that is the only bit of Karl Jobst' video, or any of his videos, that I actually like. The rest of his content, him as an individual, I do not like. I don't like Karl Jobst. I will say that visually on camera, while looking at the camera, I do not like Karl Jobst. I have plenty of reasons for not liking him to begin with. One of them is, a while back, he fed a bunch of trolls in a YouTube video saying, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. If you know you didn't do it, why do you need to make a video about it? Just all you're doing by making a video and replying to it, you're just admitting to it, basically, in one sense or another. So, walk away from it, question mark? There's a lot of stuff about him that I have looked up, found, and heard from other people that I will not be openly discussing on my channel because there is no place for my channel. Now, the reason for this video and editing is because there is a new image that is floating around that Karl Jobst is claiming is completely clearing him of the entire Billy Mitchell lawsuit. Is undisputable. It is an image that is solid proof that it is an 8-way stick, and it is not. It's not. You have people clout chasing Karl Jobst like Moist Critical, who, I personally don't mind his content, but unfortunately he's just, I don't like him as a person because he doesn't really research half the shit that he says. He usually just gets told something and then just relays it back, which is okay to an extent, but you gotta look at your shit to make sure you're fact-checking what's actually wrong before you just go out the clout chase. So that's what Critical does. I don't approve of it. And then you have Stuttering Craig, which his comment section looks as bad as fucking Moist Criticals, which these people are so asleep that as of 3 days ago, they're saying, oh, the only reason Karl Jobst cares is because he's being sued by Billy Mitchell. Did you just find this out? Like, did you actually just... This has been ongoing for, like, over a year now. So it's kind of surprising to see, like, how many people are actually brained asleep, and I don't even know why. This video is to simply talk about how that cabinet is actually a legit cabinet, and I'm going to explain why step by step. And it's going to sound fucking insane. I just want to say one last thing for frame of reference before I continue this analysis, basically. I don't support Billy Mitchell at all. I hope he loses this case. But because of the way that Karl Jobst has been pounding away socially to the media, he may very well lose the case, and he's just not even aware of it. He's basically doing what Apollo Legends' mistake was, which was to continue to talk during an ongoing lawsuit. The one thing you never want to do during a lawsuit is to continue to publicize or talk about a certain subject matter if the subject matter is pertaining to the lawsuit person, or the person issuing it, in this case Billy Mitchell. Unfortunately, both Apollo and Karl are doing that, and ultimately, an attorney's chance of getting them off the hook and protecting them is getting less and less and less and less by the day. Even though the evidence may seem justified, I'm going to prove that it may not actually be justified. And into a judge's eyes, who's completely unbiased, who doesn't know jack shit about video game machines or anything like that, would be able to look at the image and not know that it's an 8-way stick. So I'm going to explain that now. At last, we have reached the video analysis of the image in question that Karl Jobst' claim is going to clear him completely of the lawsuit and completely proves that Billy Mitchell is a cheater, right? Well, let's take a closer look at this image. The claim for the lawsuit is that Billy Mitchell had played on unmodified original hardware, which you can see the cabinets right behind him. That is the original hardware, until we look at the stick in question. Now let's take a good zoom in on this. Something at first threw me off when I saw this knob in question, because if you look at both sides of the stick itself, it has the same equivalent shadow on both the left and the right side. And for a little bit of a time, I've been thinking that this image could possibly be a very good deep fake image, and I'll explain why. A quick zoom out would show us that the cameraman in question was actually standing on the left side of the cabinet when the image was taken, but then there shouldn't be two shadows on the stick, and where is the shadow on the stick itself? The neck of the stick. Another tool that I use for checking for deepfakes is Sony Vegas's Pixelate feature, which you can sit there and individually pixelate every single pixel. Now, the reason I use this is to individually look as a sprite artist to see if the colors are changing on parent sprites or parent pixels next to one another. In this case, looking at both the vertical and the horizontal, you can see that the pixels are not changing color, which would indicate that a computer generated the color and not a camera. The reason a camera would give off this is because a camera has a lens that reflects color and light, and that would change the color ever so slightly on the image itself to neighboring pixels. That isn't exactly the case here. The neighboring pixels are all the same, which would imply computer generation or Photoshop. So now I'm going to try invert, and we're going to take a look at the inverted color of this. Now, to show you the reason that we invert is because I've made a sample of a deepfake using this image. This is the original image, and here is my deepfake. Now let's take a look at the differences. Do you see any? Let me know in the comment section if you can see it, because now I'll show you the differences. Let me invert the deepfake first, so that way you can see the differences. I'll give you a few seconds to figure out what I did to the image. Okay, do you actually see it now? Okay, I'll zoom in on it. I got bored, so I put a smiley face up, right on screen. Now, since you know how easy it is to hide certain images on an inverted, let's look at the original inverted closer at the stick this time. The black dot on the stick itself is light reflecting off of the stick from the camera when the image was shot. However, looking at the black dot itself, it looks very much like a glow tool or Adobe was used to place the dot there physically. It just looks way too suspicious, including the white parts at the bottom of the ball part of the stick seems drawn on and very crappily done at that. I almost want to say that they used a chroma mask to do the shadow at the bottom, but they messed up. So after analysis of the image itself, I find it very questionable if this image is even real, and I find it more likely to be a deep fake. But it doesn't actually stop there. Let's see if we can actually find this stick anywhere online and find out more about the cabinet itself. Videolistic credited to Joe's Classic Video Games. Thank you for this clip. It's actually very useful to be able to see the entirety of the cabinet from all sides if possible, but unfortunately he doesn't record the back, but I don't need that information. What I really needed to know was more about the sides, the dates on the sides, and to see how much information I could figure out and deduce from every individual part put onto the machine. This is because there are actually 3 iterations of Donkey Kong Arcade's cabinet. There is the blue one, which is the late finalized model, an orange one, and a red one. And I'm going to describe all of them piece by piece, starting with the red one, which was the earliest one. A lot of the information here comes straight from Vintage Arcade Gal. This information was imperatively useful, like it was insane. The finding out of the red arcade unit originally being a Tanzu machine, which I'll get into in a minute, and being originally Radar Scope, which was an entirely different cabinet. So majority of the DK cabinets that exist were actually another game's cabinet at one point, and Nintendo just repurposed them. So this page, go on the link in the description, read the entirety of the whole thing. It will start to make sense as to why Karl Jobst' video on the red stick is in fact possible to be read. Upon a quick Google search on the Arcade Museum forums, I found that there was one particular comment that stood out that actually helped really guide me on the right direction on how to figure this all out, and that the majority of the red Donkey Kong cabinets were actually the Radar Scope, which is a completely different game and with completely different parts. Back in the day, Nintendo just had a huge financial failure with Radar Scope and turned around and reused their cabinets for Donkey Kong. Radar Scope is an arcade unit that is misreferred to as Nintendo's first arcade game. There are 20 other Nintendo arcade cabinets that had came out prior in the late 70s. Being that Radar Scope and the other 20 arcade cabinets from Nintendo were used for the basis of the cabinets, they made spare parts all around whenever they needed a repair. They would have a Nintendo certified repairman come out and fix their arcade cabinets. The only other way to get a repair would be to manually send in your cabinet to Nintendo for an exorbitant shipping fee, and then receive it back and pay another fee, and then reset it back up. It was more of a hassle, and a lot more people back in the late 80s, 70s, and 90s relied heavily at at-home repairmen that had these certifications from Nintendo and read their manuals and actually were able to repair the cabinets in question. Now, I am mentioning these repairs because most of them were a mix and match from other people that were certified that had spare parts from the older cabinets, and some of these repairs that came back from Nintendo were not the same color stick for Radar Scope. The older models of Radar Scope used a black stick, while the newer ones that were repaired and sent from Nintendo and repairmen used a red one, both of which are certified. So what does this mean? What is the point to this video? Well, to sum this up, I remember a red Donkey Kong cabinet with a red knob that looked exactly like the one in Billy Mitchell's photo, but you'll notice in these red knobs that I've shown on Radar Scope, the neck is shorter in metal. Now, when I say I remember, 15 years ago at a local arcade here in my hometown, I remember seeing a Donkey Kong arcade cabinet that was red with a red neck that looked exactly like the one in this photo. Now, because I live in New Jersey, all coin-operated machines are now no longer allowed it in New Jersey at all, so this arcade had closed shop many years back, so it no longer exists, and I have no way to contact the people that originally ran it. So I'm trying to find out how to get a hold of them now, so I can find that original cabinet. Now, these cabinets use something called a Tanzu Kubernetes grid, or a TKG for short. The Radar Scope uses TKG2, whereas the later versions of Donkey Kong that previously used the cabinet would use TKG3. So now that we know that the black and red sticks from the Radar Scope were put into Donkey Kong machines and reused and certified by Nintendo, we know that those are legitimate, so we know that red sticks could be on a DK machine. But this isn't the same stick. So where does this stick come from? Additionally, in Karl Jobst' video, they're claiming that it is an 8-way stick. However, there's nothing indicating to a judge's eyes or anybody's eyes that it is in fact an 8-way stick. It's just a really tall stick. Now I have several contacts that I know of that know very well every arcade cabinet and have experience making cabinets and working with them even. And to my knowledge, and to a week's worth of my research into this matter, the only stick that I could come up with was what one person sent me was the Street Fighter Capcom arcade stick. But there's just one small problem. The neck of the Street Fighter stick is fatter than the stick that Billy Mitchell has on this unit in the photo. So, what is this stick? I don't even think it exists anywhere. I honestly feel like this image is a real good deep fake. Now, you could argue that the Street Fighter photo is closer than the other photo with Billy, but even if we were to zoom out on that photo, it's still actually shorter than Billy Mitchell's stick. I have looked everywhere for the stick that Billy Mitchell uses in this DK cabinet, and I just cannot find it. Be it from another cabinet or a third-party source, I just can't find it. And with much regret to my final analysis, the photo on the right with Billy Mitchell's control stick does not display an 8-directional figure on the panel, only a 4. So, when it comes to a judge viewing this, they will ultimately see just a control stick and have no indication visually that it is an 8-way. And to top it off, nothing proves that it is an 8-way stick to begin with, because it may or may not even be one. There are 3 things that I wanted to specify before I end out this video. Number 1, Karl Jobst is nowhere near the exit point of this lawsuit. That photo is not evidence enough of modified hardware. It really isn't. There's nothing indicating that the stick would be any different from an official 4-way stick. And I'm saying that because it is an official 4-way stick. From its appearance on both the panel and the stick itself, it to me just does not exist. The only thing that would indicate that this stick is real is if it's either photoshopped or it's from a third-party source that I just cannot find anywhere online. It just does not exist anywhere. If somebody can find out where this control stick and the mortgage broker image below came from, be it third party or wherever, it had to exist at some point from 2007 backward. It had to be made around that time period. I can't find it anywhere. I just believe that it doesn't exist. It was never made. If somebody can find me a control stick that matches that exact one in the image, and it's third party, I will change this entire video and I will apologize to Karl Jobst myself, instead of just saying outright that the video is a lie and wrong. The second thing that I wanted to specify is more of a personal opinion. My belief is that Karl Jobst is simply a clout chaser. He took the place of Apollo Legend, which he didn't need to do. Twin Galaxies was still in a lawsuit with Billy Mitchell. Nothing had to be done. Billy Mitchell was going down regardless, one way or another. When it comes to clout chasing, I have a very low opinion of people who actively do such a thing. I mean, let's openly face it here. If Karl wasn't openly engaging in the whole clout chase of Apollo versus Billy, why else would he continue to go after Billy and not anybody else in Twin Galaxies? If the purpose of Karl Jobst' channel was to expose cheating in video game history, why not go after somebody like, I don't know, Isaiah Johnson of Empire Arcadia, or as I like to call him, Square Johns. He calls himself Triforce, but he's a Tri-Fraud. Or why not go after somebody like Rodrigo Lopez, who has cheated almost every Zelda game in history? That isn't the only reason I don't like Karl Jobst. I have a main one that I haven't specified for a very long while. This is because that Karl Jobst gets most of his information from another individual and friends of Kat Despira. Kat Despira was the former writer for Twin Galaxies, and she's extremely bitter in the fact that she could never get married to Billy Mitchell. She can never collect on his fame and wealth. That's the sad existence of her life. I personally don't like her because she lied to both me and Apollo Legend, claiming to have spoken to him verbally by phone, and that was not the case at all. When I sat down and finally verbally talked to Apollo Legend myself before he ended his life many years ago, he had told me that he had never had direct voice contact with the woman at all. Apollo Legend, about 3 to 4 years before his passing, uploaded a video called The King of Con, which started the entire thing against him and Billy Mitchell. In said video clip, there is a segment where Apollo Legend himself shows off emails, or quote-unquote emails, that had came directly from Billy Mitchell himself. Although all of these papers and documents that Apollo had shown on the video clip were all forged and illegally obtained or made up by Kat Despira because she couldn't get married to the man. I'm not even kidding you.
The Twin Galaxies would enter Billy's score so quickly while so many questions about the tape remained unanswered. Well, just like Todd Rogers, Billy was heavily connected to Twin Galaxies. In Todd's case, he was just a ref who entered his own scores, but Billy, he was actually supporting Twin Galaxies financially. I got several internal Twin Galaxies documents from Catherine Despira.
Unfortunately, all the information so far that I know of that he's been spoon-fed has been given directly from Kat Despira through other individuals that have reached out to Karl. If that doesn't make matters worse, he has gone ahead and privately edited certain parts of his own videos when it comes to segments talking about Apollo himself. Let's take a look at a video clip that Billy Mitchell himself has uploaded about a year ago.
Greetings to everyone who took the time to click on this video. I'm Billy Mitchell, and welcome to my channel. In fact, many of you may find it hard to believe that I'm here, because I almost never upload to YouTube for any reason. However, I wanted to formally respond to recent accusations that Karl Jobst made of me related to Apollo Legend. May 26th, Jobst released a video downright loaded with false, defamatory statements. The most heinous accusation related to Apollo's passing. In the video, Jobst outright states that I drove Apollo to suicide. In his words, he may as well have just said murder. For those of you who haven't seen it, here's the clip.
He also sued YouTuber Apollo Legend for $1 million. I haven't spoken about this publicly, but this lawsuit ultimately ended with Apollo giving in and settling with Mitchell. He was forced to remove all of his videos about Mitchell's cheating and paid him a large sum of money. This left him deeply in debt, which required him to find extra work. But with his ongoing health issues, this was all too much of a burden, and he ultimately took his own life. Not that Billy Mitchell would ever care though. In fact, when Billy Mitchell thought Apollo died earlier, he expressed joy at the thought. The lawsuit against Apollo was just as frivolous as the rest, and Apollo definitely would have won in court, but again, he was extremely ill and couldn't handle the ongoing stress.
These claims and that story are demonstrably false. They are a total lie. Regardless of anyone's opinion of me or my dispute with Apollo, let there be no confusion. Apollo never paid me any money. I never paid Apollo any money. There was no financial transaction between Apollo and myself, ever. Apollo never even paid any legal fees of any kind. It is impossible for this tale that Jobst has told you to be true, because Apollo never paid a dime in the first place. In my hand, I have the settlement, and it proves everything I'm saying right here and now. The reality is that Apollo and I reached our settlement and we went our separate ways. We left everything behind us. The agreement had no long-lasting impact on his life and did not exert any impact afterwards. Contrary to the Jobst lie, I did not want to ruin the life of a young man with medical problems. That was a major factor in my walking away with no financial compensation whatsoever. Even before we settled, Apollo told people that our dispute was not among the principal problems he faced in life. Though forgiveness is a big thing, I was saddened to hear about his tragedy. The real reason why Jobst fabricated this story to blame me for Apollo's suicide is because he wanted to rile up his viewers' emotions. The reality is that Jobst recklessly talked about an agreement that he wasn't privy to, and nothing he said was true.
Upon hearing that, it sounds like Billy Mitchell thinks Karl is a clout chaser. The third and final thing that I wanted to say is even though I believe Billy Mitchell did cheat and use MAME, or he used a different setting or different whatever you want to call it, I still firmly believe 100% that Karl will lose the case against Billy Mitchell no matter what amount of time and new evidence is found starting right now. Why is that? Well, Karl just won't shut up. It's real simple. You wonder why in the legal world they have such a thing called NDAs. It's because they don't want you talking too much, because otherwise you'll slip up and the opposite attorney of the opposing side will see a weakness in your defense and take advantage of it. Now, there's a very strong reason why I say this. This is because 6 months ago, Billy Mitchell was denied health services from his own doctor, Dr. Stanley Skopitz. So this doctor, who's licensed and registered to do his practice to help his patients in the medical world, is having a bias against another person simply because somebody else online is calling him a cheat, be it factual or not, and now he's being denied medical services and is now suffering from pain from a hernia. I speak from experience from having my organs ripped open, waking up on a table, and having them out in a bowl. So I know what the hell he's experiencing. I have a hernia mesh in my side as I'm saying this right now. You see, every time I talked to Apollo, he constantly mentioned his stress and the pain that he was going through and the amount of worry that he had for this lawsuit. He was constantly trying to learn new things and possibly trying to figure out his best to get out of any trouble. He didn't want to pay absorbent fees. He didn't want to win either. He just wanted to be left alone and have his view publicized. That was literally it. That would be anybody's worry if somebody's legally coming after them. So we both understood what it means to go after Isaiah or to go after Billy Mitchell. We understood those risks when we did those things. Now, originally when I exposed Isaiah Johnson, I'm going to say this completely frank, it was not originally made for Apollo Legend on his request. It was actually somebody else who had requested me to make it. It doesn't really matter who the person that requested me to make that video on Isaiah was anymore. Realistically, it doesn't matter. What matters right now is that in addition to the third thing that I was mentioning would be Karl will now probably have to face the facts of having to pay for the medical expenses of Billy Mitchell when it comes to Dr. Skopitz ditching him. In the legal world, this is called pain and suffering, and I'm pretty sure with how publicized it's been, it's going to be more than easy to go after Karl for. And that's all I have to say for this video.